sir. And I'll just bring you in because there are a number of questions that right now I want to put forth that need answering, honestly. And I'd like you to give us some of those answers. The first question that we'd like to ask here is, who is accountable for something like this happening? Who's responsible for the death of 17-year-old Priya? So far, the government has said 2 doctors have been identified. They've been suspended. How did a simple ligament tear procedure go so horribly wrong that it culminated with the death of the 17-year-old footballer? Now, is the suspension of 2 doctors from this hospital enough? They belong to a hospital in Kolattur which botched up the first surgery on her leg. Will criminal action be taken against the doctors, essentially, who killed Priya? Going by the evidence we have right now, this is a clear-cut case of medical negligence that led to her life being lost. And finally, is there a need for stricter laws to hold hospitals accountable as well in these circumstances? Dr. Bagai, to bring the first question to you, sir, what could have possibly led to things going so horribly wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong, but are ligament tear procedures fairly simple to deal with? Do you see these kind of mishaps ever happening?
Good evening. First, prayers and condolences to the family for losing a young, beautiful girl. It's extremely heart-wrenching. Now, when you talk in terms of knee arthroscopies, the rate of, as far as the mortality is concerned, death rate is concerned, it's extremely rare. It's less than 0.1%. The overall complications are also extremely less, 0.008%. To establish the cause, of course, we need a neutral forensic audit of all the case records and to understand whether the procedures were followed in according to the norms, whether the pre-anesthetic checks were done, whether all the precautionary blood tests and the routine tests before the surgery were done. But having said that, the risks really are so rare that it's a simple daycare procedure. You don't even require a patient to stay overnight. That's the level of advancement if you do it in a proper center. The local infections could be a very major cause. A deep vein thrombosis, that's a blood clot, could be a cause. Bleeding or clotting profiles being abnormal. And of course, what is being described in the news is that she was shifted because they did an amputation and that went wrong. And then, of course, she went into multi-organ failure. So I think it's a combination of factors. Most probably it is sepsis. That's an overriding infection, which probably is either hospital acquired or during the surgery. I think this is some act of omission or commission. And if the doctors are held guilty, the strictest punishment should be given out. I think this is a wake-up call that all surgeries, be it minor or major, should undergo a stricter norm. I think we need better surveillance. We need more control on hospital-acquired infection as a possibility. And all the doctors and surgeons, I've said this on many platforms, and indeed even physicians, every 5 years must undergo a re-evaluation. Having studied medicine now for 40 years, you cannot rely on old knowledge. You have to update yourself. The procedures and the skills are being enhanced almost on a monthly, daily basis. We need to keep update with the skills, and the doctors especially need a revalidation of the licenses. But with regards these set of doctors, if they are held guilty, I think the law must take its course. I don't think just a mere compensation is sufficient. I think the medical community should stand up and say, if an error has occurred, to investigate it and to ensure that such accidents never happen again.
Dr. Bagai, on a larger context, do you believe that as far as Indian law is concerned, we need to hold hospitals more accountable? Very often there are examples drawn to what happens in the United States, where hospitals are extremely held accountable at least, and face criminal charges if there's even the slightest of lapses. Do you believe that kind of legislation, that kind of strict law needs to be brought into India as well?
Yeah, so there are 2 parts to your question. I think it's an extremely important point. The 2 parts are, one is, of course, the doctor's skills. So unless until you don't validate and reevaluate the doctor's skills over a period of given number of years to make sure that they revalidate their license, it's almost impossible to have an old surgeon practicing old skills. The second important point is that the hospitals must have a standardization of care. Therefore, the accreditation is important. I've said this again very often, and I'll say it again. Unaccredited hospitals who are not digitally enhanced really are prone for major risks, major infections, human errors, and of course post-operative complications, unfortunately, like we've seen in this case. So I think we need a reevaluation of the medical system itself. You can't just have smaller centers running and do procedures day in and day out without maintaining the minimum bare required norms which are mandatory. Strictly speaking, as a one-liner, no one should die in any surgery, but least of all in a routine arthroscopic surgery. This is not a life-threatening surgery which was taken. It was not an emergency surgery. This was an elective procedure. 99.9% the patients go back the same day.
But that's exactly the concern. Like you said, sir, this is supposed to be a simple procedure that many of us, I've had a ligament tear, many of us have undergone. And the fact that a life could be snuffed out of a 17-year-old is something that, unfortunately serves as a wake-up call for society and will lead to a lot of fear also spreading across the country right now. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, thank you very much for joining us, sir, with your expert view on this to help us also understand what went wrong in this case. I want to also get you the timeline of how things unfolded in the case of Priya, the 17-year-old who was admitted to hospital first on November 7th. Now, it was on this date, after she suffered a ligament tear, after she underwent an MRI scan, and she was told to go through this procedure, that she was admitted to this hospital and underwent the procedure for the ligament tear. Now, the next day, she was shifted from the hospital in Kolattur to the Rajiv Gandhi hospital in Chennai. The family was intimated that Priya was moved out of the hospital. That's when they sensed that something was wrong. Now, the very next day, on November 9th, the doctors at the Rajiv Gandhi hospital said that things are not right. This procedure clearly went wrong, and hence confirmed that they have to amputate Priya's leg. So that happened on November 9th. Now, from 9th all the way up to November 14th, she remained hospitalized because things went from bad to worse. The doctors ensured that they conducted a follow-up surgery because there was necrosis, the death of some tissues after the surgery as well. Now, post that follow-up, Priya was reportedly unconscious yesterday. She was shifted to the ICU. And the tragic news that came in this morning at about 7 a.m. is that Priya had passed away due to multi-organ failure. Now, in a matter of 1 week, essentially, her life was snuffed out, and all because of the first surgery, the simplest of them, which led to problems, which led to complications because of negligence. We're going to continue following up on this story here on India Today, ask all of the questions of the administration, ensure that the government follows up and ensures a detailed investigation as well to hold all those responsible and ensure that they face the strictest possible action in this particular case.